Hi everyone, here's Emil from DoubleDM podcast. Obviously, you know that. Just letting you know that this episode is a little shorter, as you might have already seen. That is mainly due to the fact that we haven't recorded a recap for this episode. That is due to personal things, private things, and just general work stress of creating this TTRPG podcast. So take this as a reminder to sometimes take your breaks, sometimes cancel stuff, and just take care of yourself. We're both fine. We're just taking this week off of recording our recap and episode. However, next week we will still have an episode. We have a buffer that is exactly for this reason in place. And yeah, for you, nothing will change much except that this episode doesn't have a recap. It's shorter, it's sweeter. It's still the great discussion we have had. And yeah, please enjoy. Hey listener, how are you enjoying the show so far? Tell us about it in whatever way you see fit. Go to our social media pages and add us or DM us about your favorite episode of the show. We would love to hear from you on what impact our show might have had on your home games. Or you could review us on your podcast app of choice and leave us a nice message with a 5-star review. And if you want to go above and beyond, bring a friend into the fold. Tell them about our show and refer us to them so they can get a piece of the pie as well. Thank you for listening to DoubleDM and joining us on this incredible journey.
So, Emil, in my campaigns, usually, or at least...
I don't play in your campaign.
Yeah, I know. Not yet, at least. Usually, what I like to do is give my players magic items pretty early on in the campaign that kind of evolve with them. So they always have the same item, but it doesn't feel the same all the way through.
Okay, yeah.
Through that, I was thinking, hey, what even makes a good magic item? Or why do I give out magic items at all? And that's what I want to talk to you a bit about. In general, why do we give out magic items? How do we make them? Do we need to make them? What kind of magic items can we give out? Or should we give out? And when? And why are they there? And all of that stuff. So what is your basic opinion on giving players magic items?
I'm thinking of a good way to phrase it, but I'm thinking of a good way to phrase it in a context that is not D&D and fantasy centric, but magic items are obviously a fantasy centric thing. So I'm just gonna say the thing. Just go for it. That's my basic opinion. At least, no, it has been that since ever, really, because let's be real, magic items are fucking cool. They've always been, it's always been so fun to have something that gives you another way to engage with what is around you. And yes, I know most magic items are a +1 sword, a +2 bow. Hot take, instantly at the beginning of the episode, I think you need those magic items as well.
Yeah, you do.
Because if not, that creates some kind of void around these other more special magic items you have. You can obviously want that void and play with it. But I think that having basic, normal magic items, as weird as that sounds together, it is just better to have these items to fill the void, because they explain a lot about the mechanisms that work on when it comes to magic items in your worlds and games. Because, right, you have your magic item, it is like this world-ending great sword, it's called Calamity Breaker or something, right? It's supposed to be the most epic thing that can make volcanoes erupt and shit like that. So then there are 1,000 questions you can ask about it. Who created it? Why did they do it? How was it created, right? And stuff like that. And all of those instances, I think, so this was like, sure, this item is cool and fuck, and I'm not gonna say that it's not cool, but for when there is something very epic of something, there needs to be something very basic of it for that thing to be epic or be more epic.
Exactly.
And right, there is a normal greatsword, but then there's also, right, a little better special greatsword, the +1 greatsword, because not everyone has the power to create such a magic item like the Calamity Breaker. However, some people do have the capabilities to build a +1 or +2 greatsword. If they have the capabilities to do that, why? If they have the capabilities to do that, there should be those items as well. And since those items are easier to create, they will be the ones that exist more of. The Calamity Breaker is a one in a lifetime thing, but there's like 5,000 +1 greatswords out there.
Yeah, I think it's all about the contrast in that regard. And in one of my games where I play in, we have 2 insanely cool swords. We got 2 insanely cool swords pretty early on. It just occurred to me, all these big, amazing, awesome swords all have the edgiest names of them all, like Calamity Breaker, for example, or in this one campaign, we have Soul Terror.
I mean, we can also just go with the example that, for example, D&D gives you, the Holy Avenger. That's also, let's be real.
Yeah.
It's a name that a 12-year-old would give their stick that they found besides the side of the road.
Exactly.
To feel fucking cool. And now, one thing about those names, because you brought it up already, yes, those names are great. Because, let's be real, TTRPGs, we play them for fun. If the fighter gets a sword that is called Calamity Breaker, Soul Terror, Blood Curdler, or Blood Drinker, right?
Yeah, it's
first of all a fucking cool moment, but also at the same time we can all make fun of it.
Yeah.
So it's an addition to the game. It's an addition to the fun. And yes, for example, actually, when it comes to naming things, very different thing. But if you name your sword as Sephiroth, or something. First of all, none of your players will be able to pronounce it. Second of all, that name means nothing to their fantasy. Right? What you want to do as a dungeon master is, with everything you present to your players, is to evoke something in the fantasy of those people.
Yeah.
You want them to imagine something. When you name a sword Soul Terror or Holy Avenger, that name is more evocative than Sephiroth.
Definitely.
It just is, because those are actual words people know. It's not just the name. As long as the name's a feeling. This is a paladin sword. It's shining bright. It's made of the perfect steel. It is golden inlaid. It is radiating magic. Like, that is way cooler than Sephiroth, which can be a good thing if it, for example, has a second title of the Soul Ripper or the Sword of, and then, right, a demon, whatever, the Demon Lord. That also works. But you need something to evoke something in the fantasy that the people have around you at the table.
Exactly. And I think, especially when you first hear the name of some things or some items, you can immediately kind of make connections to what it might be doing, even though you don't know exactly yet. Of the sort Calamity Breaker, you kind of can guess what it might do and what it might not do. But if you just hear Azatha, okay, cool. All right, I have no clue what this is. For example, in one of my games that an item that I created was, or a couple of items were the Locket of the Grove Maiden and the Height of the Embraced. So you kind of can guess for what it might be, what the purpose might be, or what it can or cannot do, especially if you're the player that I tailored that item for, especially then. But yeah, names have power. Names have fucking power.
Yeah, names have a lot of power.
Yeah, and I think in my games, I usually do one amazing, out-of-the-ordinary, one-of-a-kind magic item, and then more or less mostly baseline things.
Yeah.
The basic stuff. So this item that they have, this one item, feels cool and special and amazing that you have that contrast. And there might be some small little potions or one-time use things that can feel amazing as well, but mostly basic stuff plus one amazing shit thing is my kind of ratio that I like to go for. But regarding creating these amazing things, did you ever create your own magic items before that you used in a campaign?
I mean, obviously, yeah. I've created, like, one of the first things I think people do start homebrewing is magic items, because they're a fucking cool reward to give to your players. And let's be real, we want to reward our players. We've done an episode on rewarding. I think we've even done 2 episodes on rewarding. And in that, we also talked about magic items and how you should create magic items that fit your player characters, either by being exactly for them or embracing the concept that this player has. And for that, let's be real, you have to create them your own.
Yeah.
That is something that was stated in that episode. You have to create your own, more or less, or you should create your own. And I think that it's something that most GMs have done that have played for like longer than like 3 to 4 months even, because like, sure, you can also write, for example, sure, for most people it's probably the campaign that they homebrew. But if there's something that they're actually creating, mechanically speaking, it is probably magic items and or monsters, because those are the two things where people mostly create stuff.
Yeah.
If you look around the D&D space, there's like 2 types of content creators for D&D, and that's 3 types: magic items, monsters, and adventures. And I'm gonna take adventures out of it because it is a lot more story writing than just doing purely mechanical things here. And then again, there's a lot of overlap as well, right? People from both sides are going into the other side and doing that as well. Some people are creating magic items that fit the monster. When you kill it, you get that magic item. Some people say, okay, I have a magic item, I create a monster for it that engages in some way with that item, right? And I think, it's one of those 2 things that people do create as their first thing. And I've created countless magic items before, and I've done countless mistakes in doing so.
So let me ask you, what's your process usually when you create a magic item? Do you have a set process that you follow, or do you just go along and see what comes to mind? Or is that your whole process?
My whole process is 90% just not knowing what I want to do. Then for the last 10%, just blurting it onto a page or onto a note and saying, done.
All right.
There's no really way to figuring out stuff for me. There's no set timeline and stuff. There's no, right? Because I do this just for fun. I am not releasing magic items to public or something like other creators are that also do release weekly magic items, for example. Funny thing, I've had discussions with people that release magic items or monsters or stuff like that, where it was like, I couldn't create a weekly podcast, but you can, right? And I'm the exact same opposite. I could not create magic items on the weekly or monsters on the weekly or even adventures on the weekly or even bi-weekly. I could not do that. But what I can do is talk my ass off in a recording and then edit it afterwards.
Hell yeah.
So that's what I do here. But there is no set process for me because it is just for me and my tables.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's no one else that I have to, there's no pressure at all to it, because when my players don't like the item, they just don't use it. And if it is, for example, a specialized item for that person, the first thing I do is talk to that person as much as I can about that item, because I don't believe that I am spoiling my players if I say, okay, I'm going to give you a magic item in like 5 sessions. What do we want it to be? Because sure, it takes the surprise away from giving the magic item, but at the end of the day, it also will make sure that for the rest of the campaign, then onwards, the item is just better suited for them.
Exactly.
I take that trade deal.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think at least in most situations that I've done this, talk to my players about what their magic item can do and what not, that I will give them in 5 sessions. They will have forgotten what the fuck their magic item will do in these 5 sessions, and then are just completely stunned at what an amazing magic item you've created. And I'm always just there like, we created that together like 5 weeks ago. You knew what this was going to do, but glad you like it.
Glad you like it. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't necessarily have to create it with them and send them the entire block of text that the magic item does and the mechanics of it, right? It can just be, what type of magic item do you want? That's all you can ask. And then your player goes, okay, so my character, right, they're, I don't know, a ranger fighting 2-wielded short swords. They're kind of the tank of the party. And then you can workshop, okay, so how do 2 short swords look? Yeah, okay, that could be cool. How does an item look that empowers whatever weapons you are holding if you want to switch it up? Sure. How about a fucking armor? Oh, yeah, let's go with an armor.
Yeah.
And so, right? And then the idea gets born. Because first of all, I have to figure out a fucking idea. And it's a very hard thing to basically get that first step into such an episode here where we are supposed to give you help on what to do, is figure the idea out. What do you actually want to do? And you can write that down. Write down bullet points. What is this item? What do you want this item to do? What is this item supposed to do? What is this item supposed to support? So, okay, I have this character. They're doing this and this. This is their kind of play style. How can I support that?
Exactly.
And just write down, okay, so an item that gives them that, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be like +2 AC. You don't have to write down the mechanics of it yet. You just have to write down it gives them tankiness. And whatever that that then means for you. Maybe that's temporal hit points. Maybe that's healing. Healing is also part of tankiness. Maybe that's AC. Maybe that is something else.
I think just writing the concept or the ideas, the rough draft basically of the item down can help a lot. What I like to do is either when I talk to my players and create these concepts of these items before I flesh them out, is talk to them if they want their features to be more prominent through that item or if their features should be complemented by that item.
Yeah.
So either furthering what they can do already or giving them new stuff to do that they can't. There's basically these two things that I like to do with, and my players like to receive as magic items, is either for the barbarian suddenly to be able to cast spells or just to be more ragey, you know? One of these things is usually doing something that you can't or being better at something that you already can do. And I think this is something that you have to figure out with your players together, because if your player wants to do some stuff that they can't, but you give them something that they already can do, but then do it better, it feels lackluster. No matter how amazing the item is, it just feels wrong.
Yeah. I mean, you can create the most epic fucking bow in reality ever conceived by anyone and give it to a paladin that wants to play a sword and shield paladin. The item is not gonna be effective. And then the question becomes, right, are your players the type of meta gamers and power gamers, which point has to be made here, aren't bad people just because that is their playstyle? Stop vilifying people that use a magic item just for the stats. But if those people say, okay, this bow is better than any sword and shield combo I can get, so my paladin is gonna start using the bow. If that is the case, that's not necessarily a bad thing. You gave them the bow after all. Like, you wanted that to be used, and now they are using it.
Exactly.
But at the same time, right, I'm currently thinking, because one of my players in my Tyranny of Dragons game came to me, not necessarily in private, and it was also not a demand, it was just a question more or less. He has a very specific idea for his character. And when he started building that character, he wanted a wizard. What he did not understand is that D&D wizards, no matter how well you play it, except when you go Blade Singer maybe, they aren't combat mages necessarily, or battle mages like you have them in MMOs. Mages that stand in melee range and cast big explosive spells that either buff themselves so they can hit with swords and sticks and whatever, or just use magic spells on a near range basis, right? And yeah, his idea wasn't necessarily that well translated to a character sheet. And right, he's doing his best to still make that idea of what he wants to do work, because at the end of the day, he wants to have the fun that he has in that way, and he's trying his best to get that fun. There's nothing bad about that.
No.
Is his wizard the best wizard out there? No, it is. No, he isn't. Clearly not. And that's not an insult to the player for building a character wrong. I couldn't give less fucks if he has built his character wrong. The only thing I can do as a GM is help him make it better.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna help this player regardless of how their character is currently. If they want their character to be a combat mage in melee and maybe even take a level of paladin or two, but they don't have the strength requirement for multiclassing, I have heard the cry for a magic item that when he holds it gives him a level of paladin, or at least the ability to smite on melee strikes, and he can use his intelligence modifier on hits or whatever, right? That is all he's basically asking for. And that's a cool magic item for a wizard that in his backstory is more or less the chosen one of a fucking god.
Yeah.
Like, that is a perfect fit. And that idea came only by that creative dialogue with the players. We were talking about his character, and he was expressing that his character doesn't feel that great. For example, his stats, his ability scores are very evenly placed. He has intelligence, wisdom, and charisma, all three at 16, and strength, con, and dex all at 10. So he has a +0, +0, +0, +6, +3, +3, +3. For a wizard that should have an intelligence of +5 at like level 13, that's objectively bad, because his spells aren't hitting as much as they could, or at least not as strong as they could be. And that is because he didn't understand how the game worked when he was building the character. And I did my best to help him in understanding it. Well, now he has driven himself into a corner, and we've been talking about this. We've said, no, we don't want to necessarily rebuild the character. He wants his character to be this, because this is an interesting other thing. His character is somewhat evenly balanced. For what reason? And now, for example, I could give him a magic item that increases his intelligence to 19. like a headband of intellect. I could give him a book that gives him a +2 stat increase flat when he reads it to intelligence, right? And that's also a very fitting magic item. And it's fun thing, it's a magic item out of the book, right? That's the next step for me. I look into the book. What is there to do the thing that I want to do with my magic item already? What item can I either explicitly already use or base my stuff off? That's my second step. Look into the book. After I have something of an idea, look into the book, see what is already there, what I can work with.
Getting inspiration or even the full magic item already is a good thing to do to see if that is a possibility. Because let's be real, it can be quite a lot of work to create a magic item that's specifically tailored to a certain character that, theoretically others could use, but not that good or not that well or to not that degree and stuff. It's a lot of work, or it can be. And getting that load of work off of your shoulders can be a good thing. So looking into the book is a thing that I have or I should do more often to see what has already been given to me. But I just like the process of creating, so I usually don't and give myself much more work than I need to or should have. But that's a different story. But there are some funny and cool and completely whack magic items out there.
Whack.
That are just completely useless unless that player wants it or needs something along or wants something along those lines, and then it's perfect.
Some of these magic items, right? Cloak of many pouches or something, bag of beans, those magic items, right? Those, let's be real, gimmick items that could still be very effective and are oftentimes the focus point of stories where everyone goes, my players circumvented an entire plot line by using the bag of beans. I mean, I've heard that legit Reddit headline at least 5 times in my life. I mean, that's a great story, right? It's something that we all kind of want. It's amazing. It's an interesting story, and that's why I think what my philosophy for magic items should be or is most of the time. How can I give my players a tool to do something I don't expect? How can I give my players the tools to do something that they weren't able to do before without me planning what they are supposed to do? Because if I plan out what they are supposed to do with that magic item, I take away all the agency of using it. But if I give them an item that is very open-ended, and let's be real, those are hard to create. The bag of beans, cloak of many pouches, or whatever it's called. But giving your players even is just a magic item that is open-ended gives them the ability to be creative what this item does. For example, I gave one of my players, I think they're called bonus actions. That bonus action is the creator of this, or at least the inspiration for this. They're a magic item creator uploading stuff on Instagram and Patreon. Very great content, by the way. And they had, like 3 to 4 years ago, they created an item that was basically magical chalk. Very simple stuff, like a box of magical chalk. And each chalk had like 20 uses, and they were different colors. And different colors, you could draw different symbols. And with those different symbols, you would evoke different effects. For example, with the white chalk, you could draw a symbol on a lock and therefore basically use the arcane lock spell. Draw another symbol, you cast the knock spell with it. Use the green one, and if you use the green one and you draw it onto food or a food or water container, you cast Purify Food and Drink, right? Evoking very basic spell effects for a group that, for example, did not have any divine casters at that time. That was very important to give them access to all of these cool and interpretive spells, in my opinion. So I took the item, made it my own, and gave it to one of my players. And now he has a box of chalk that he still actively uses 4 years later into the campaign. Because let's be real, it's fucking amazing to have to pull out a different piece of chalk of different color, draw a symbol, and evoke a certain effect that you want. And the effects are small for characters of level 13 and higher or something. They're not big, but they're interesting and give them opportunities to do stuff that they weren't able to do before. Yes, he could have picked the lock, but he doesn't have to now. He can just use the chalk and do it that way. And he can also then lock it again later. And maybe even they know someone is in there and they want to stop them from coming out because the players are currently sneaking past this room. Draw the arcane lock signal on that spell. Boom. Perfect. Done. Giving the players the creative choices that they want. Perfect.
Yeah, one thing that happened in one of my campaigns, I gave one of my players not a armor of smoldering, but a cloak of smoldering from Xanathars, where it's just harmless, odorless smoke coming off a cloak. However, I forgot how they managed it, but they switched cloaks with one of the people that they wanted to pickpocket something from, or a bigger thing from, and then basically gaslit them into thinking their cloak was on fire. And therefore being able to pat them down and all of that. Just because there are no mechanics behind this item. It's just, there's smoke coming off it, but they kind of used that information and made it their own and made a thing out of it. And that was something that I haven't thought of. I just thought, hey, a cloak that smokes is cool, right? Perfect. Just a visual effect.
Yeah.
They switched it around and found a thing and made a thing with it. Amazing. And that's what I live for when I give my players magic items. Some weird, random shit that I would have never thought about. Or just having 2 immovable rods and basically being able to fly without being able to fly. Because you can just climb the fucking air. Stuff like that. That is what I live for when I give my players magic items.
Okay, so let's go back to this creation steps. You've asked me what my steps are, and my steps are completely jumbled into every direction. But at the first of all, it starts with an idea, obviously.
Yeah.
Then it starts with referencing. What do I have for that idea already? What can I use for that idea? How can I basically expand on that idea? What comes after that? After you've basically have something and an idea, and you've solidify it into something that isn't quite yet finished, really. What comes after that for you? How do you figure out mechanics?
Well, it's a lot of referencing what other items can do and how they do it, and then referencing those mechanics back to the idea that I had, and then linking these ideas with the mechanics that can evoke effects. For example, if you just said tankiness, as you said before, it could mean bonuses to saving throws, it could mean AC, it could be healing, it could be temporary hit points, it could be all of that, all of those things, or in general taking less damage, whatever. And therefore referencing what options do I have for creating these effects specifically. And if I don't find anything that fit those, how can I make them work? Which is usually not a thing, but it can be. But just referencing what mechanics there are and what mechanics would fit the idea that you had. And then linking those two together to create the mechanic of the item. Then connect that to the reference that you had in mind. And then, ta-da, you have the magic item.
Ta-da, you have a magic item. Right? The process it's not necessarily all a lot trial and error. It's just about what feels right for that. For example, I've created a magic item very early on, one of the first I've ever created, which was a black rapier that my warlock player got from their patron with basically a soul counter. Basically, it was a stat tracking weapon.
Okay.
And whenever he basically reached a certain threshold of stat tracked enemies killed with this weapon, this item would get stronger. And stronger in the sense of you get +1 to damage and to hit. So at the end of the day, when he would have killed 100 enemies with this rapier, he would get a +5 to attack and to damage. Not just a +1, +2, +3, but 2, +4, +5. Because I was thinking he's going to get to that point at a point where the to hit doesn't necessarily matter that much anymore, because he would have an 8 or 9 anyway, right? I don't care if he has a +14 or +10. At the end of the day, he still just has to roll not too high to hit the most monsters, stuff like that. But I gave the weapon another effect because I was like, okay, that's not enough. I want this item to be an actual force to be reckoned with. And then I said, okay, when he rolls a certain number on the damage die, 6 or higher on a D8, this item has dealt enough damage to release an ear-piercing, terrifying scream that everyone in range that can hear it has to make a wisdom saving throw or be feared for 1 round, 2 rounds, or even 3 rounds, with the ability to repeat the saving throw at the end of your... Now, that included the other player characters.
Yeah.
Why? Why did I include that? Well, for me, it was, okay, this effect is super giga strong. It can be very strong. And I wanted a way to make this item also have a risk involved. I didn't just want the item to be a powerful tool. I wanted it to be a tool that could either do good or bad for you in that certain moment. And for example, when they were fighting a group of very high-ranking cultists who are immune to being feared, and he used this weapon, the only thing he did aside from damage was make the combat harder for his group.
Yeah, but putting in things like risks for your own party when you use items is just a lot of fun.
It increases it just increases the amount of how the item can be interacted with. Even if it's a bad thing, the group now has to work around this effect. The group now has to work with this or against it. And that also at the end of the day gives your players to do stuff to do in a good when we assume that it can do that. It can very, very well quickly be a slippery slope into you just locking down other ideas as well.
But I think something like this enables different layers to the same problem and therefore more creative solutions in general. It can lead to locking off situations, but in most instances that I've noticed that or experienced drawbacks on an item, it only opened up more options and therefore more interesting play. For example, in one item that I built was a locket for a druid that kind of was a corrupted item, and the corruption then spread to the character themselves, which modified their wild shape to be with horns and gnarled, bony extrusions from their wild shape form and stuff like that, dealing necrotic damage on hit basically for a moon druid, but having the chance to fall to that corruption even further the longer they have been in wild shape, which again meant more damage but less control. So they had to see how long can I stay in that? Should I do I need the damage now? Do I switch back? All of that stuff, and giving them the option to at some point when they want to proceed that storyline, cleanse that corruption that has spread from the locket to the player itself, and therefore just giving me a shitload of options, enemies and stuff that I can use, gives my players more options of what they can and cannot do, and gives me options for plot points to be thrown and sprinkled in. And that's what I love as well when I use magic items, using them as plot points or as plot hooks or something along those lines, because this is a hugely underestimated thing for magic items, at least in my experience, to use them as plot hooks and plot points, not necessarily only as rewards. That is completely overlooked in my opinion.
Yeah, right. This is a magic item. It's just a reward for something. Your players did something well. They find a hoard of gold and magic items. This is done. Yeah, exactly. Sure. Right. The magic item is supposed to be a reward. And we are not trying to hide the fact that it's a reward. It's supposed to be a reward. It's supposed to be somewhat of a level up without actually the mechanical values of a level up, basically. Exactly. And then let's be real. If your item isn't integrated into your world, like with, for example, a plotline, it doesn't have to necessarily be a plotline, right? But for example, it could also just be that this item has a history. If you have your item that is called Calamity Breaker, as we've said in the beginning, let your players make a history check if that item has ever been used or where it has, by whom it has been used. That already alone, it doesn't have to be an entire plotline of quests where their players have to go around the globe doing stuff for something. But integrating it into the world will give you a lot more buy-in into those magic items. It will make your players more invested in using these items in a cool, different way, I think. Because, right, okay, yeah, sure, you have your sword and it does cool more damage and it has cool effects when you basically combo with the item and don't miss attacks or something. Sure, it's a purely combat magical item that is supposed to only work in combat, but at the end of the day, then when your item has history and you describe how this history really becomes an impact in the game, right? This, for example, we all know the items that have their own living consciousnesses, right? Talking items, love them or hate them, they give you a lot of integration into your world. And this is why I think a lot of people like them. Not because, they're cool, just because it is a point of integration into the game. This item talks. This item has a personality. Why does it have that? How do I get rid of it? What does the item actually say? What does the item want? How does it? And so on and so forth.
Exactly. Also, what I hope to achieve at some point, or see it and witness at some point, is when I give my players a legendary item, something that has been rumored in mythos and legends for eons, and my players just randomly walking through a city with that, and everyone thinking it's a fucking knockoff. Just, okay, cool. You got a knockoff of that quote-unquote sword. Cool. And then just the talk about, it being the real fucking deal. And then I think that's a fun interaction to have. Or in general, when your characters and their items that they carry get recognized because they have so much history to that item. And one thing that I want to touch on again is the evolving magic items. What do you think about evolving items in general that don't stay the same all the way through?
Has to be done with care. I think there's a lot of hype around them for good reason, but it could be that the reasons get lost in that hype about those reasons. I think the item needs to have a core theme from the get-go. It has to stay the same throughout all of these evolving stages, because your magic sword, to do this in hyperbole, basically as a hyperbole, your magic sword that evolves into a bow is out of place.
Yeah.
Like, if that fits the character, I could say yeah, but I would not create such an item if not that specific character is in mind. It needs to have a core theme. It needs to have a core value basically to it, right? This magical sword will always be a heavy hitting sword, whatever heavy hitting means to you, but it has to stay the same through all of the evolving stages, through all of the advancements. However, I've also talked about one other thing before on this show, and that is a campaign that is entirely focused on characters and their signature weapon, where they then get to different points and tests and trials and magic places where they can evolve their magic item into a direction of their choosing.
Ooh, okay.
Players, for example, get their magic items, and as a basic thing, the first quest is travel to one of the elemental planes and enchant your item there. And the players get to choose which plane they want their item to be enchanted at. I want my bow to be enchanted at the elemental plane of air. Okay, your bow becomes quicker, lighter, even quiet, right? You can make stealth shots. You can fire one more arrow per round that only deals like half the damage of a normal arrow or something. Whatever you really want to think about. That is also evolving, but that is again binding. Then the core theme is the players decide.
Yeah.
But that core theme needs to be done from the get-go. You can't just put a magic item into your game and then figure out the theme at very late stages. It doesn't have to be the first thing you do, but it needs to be aligned with what the item was at the beginning and what it will be at the end.
Yeah, I think it is one of the first things that you have to do, to at least think of a concept that wiggles through all the evolutions. You don't have to have necessarily mechanics for every evolution right from the get-go, but at least an idea of what it should do when you want an evolving magic item. It's like the process with normal quote-unquote magic items. Idea, reference, mechanics. The idea and reference, these two steps are still for all stages of the evolution of that magic item. I think they are needed for that, to have a coherent and working magic item that feels like a thing and not just multiple things stuck together. Yeah, just to interject there.
No, it's a good interjection. But okay, those evolving magic items, Niels, how do you do them aside from that core theme, for example?
Well, I like to keep in mind who is going to get that magic item.
Yeah.
Because I usually try to tailor these magic items towards a specific player character. So that only this character, or not only this character can use it, but only this character wants to use it and should use it. Because for the others, it just doesn't make any sense. Because regarding on what I discussed with my player beforehand, it amplifies one of their or a couple of their abilities or gives them new ones, depending on what they want to do.
Yeah.
That is something that especially with evolving items has to be talked about before, because they are hopefully being around a little longer, or the whole campaign, and are still different and cannot be easily or don't want to be easily changed out by new items that they got, because you all only have this one item that changes and changes. So you have to make sure this is an item that everyone, that the person is fine with keeping for a long time.
Yeah.
So that's in a very important step. Or evolving magic items, especially they are going to stick around for a lot longer. You have to make sure that your players like them. You have to make sure that the players like to use these items and they think they fit to their own character. Just because they aren't easily exchangeable in regards to other quote-unquote normal magic items.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that I keep in mind and talk to my players about, what their character wants to do.
Yeah, 100%. It's so
Not
important.
only in mechanical reasons, what their character wants, what character build that they want to go, but what does their character want to do in a story sense. So I can base the evolutions and when those things happen off of their own personal story.
Where do they want to go, right?
Exactly. Get a direction from your players.
When you know where they're going with their character, you can also create an item that will stay with them on that journey. Or, once again, fun thing, going the exact opposite direction, an item that will diverge from them. And therefore they have to choose, do I keep the item or do I not? What will happen? Adding another layer to the story and plot and scenario that happens at your table. And I think at the end, that's what magic items are for you as a GM. They are a tool for you to add to the complexity and plot of your games. They are a tool that you can throw in whenever you like to give your players more opportunities and interesting points of interaction. Your world, another layer. Let's be real, your enemies, another point of contention. If they have such a magic item, right, they get the cool things to do. And at the end of the day, when the players defeat the BBEG, they can take the item and use it for themselves. Or not and destroy it because they think that it needs to be destroyed. You give so much opportunities by just throwing a little item in there. You just need to think about the opportunities, and it does not have to do anything with the creating of that item, right? And for example, you could go to Twitter and go to, for example, Abyssal Brews, my favorite magic item creators out there. Just take one of their newest magic items, those release every Tuesday, by the way, and just say, okay, take this. I have the mechanics now down. I have cool art for this. Now I write the story around this. Now I write the plot around this. I wrote a little bit of history. Which character am I giving this to? What do I want this item to do? Maybe I can change it, right? You have so much possibilities with items that is not just the item itself. I think that is what magic items are so fun and why they're used so much. Not just because they're a cool reward and a cool item and a cool opportunity and cool stats, because they give so much complexity by being such a little addition.
They are not only literal tools for your characters, they are tools for you as a GM and as a player to build stories off of and create more stories with that, or create deeper and more engaging stories with that, just because you add one small detail that adds a whole bunch of story possibility to it.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
No, not really. I'm thinking if there's some kind of closing statement we can do. Something, right? I think one important thing is if people are coming to this episode having hoped for a quick guide to making the perfect magic items, there is no guide. No YouTube video, no podcast episode. Even if this episode is named The Perfect Way to Create Magic Items, the illusion needs to be broken. There is no perfect way, or at least no formalized way. There is a perfect way for you, but that has to do with the player characters, the players, the world, and every variable that I cannot control.
Yeah, because into magic item creation, there goes so much, or that differs from person to person, and not just kind of, but is different. Because I mean, Emil and I, we played at tables together and have our own groups, and I think from the mentality we are pretty similar in regards to our GM style. But I assure you, there are so many differences between our tables just because we are different people and play with different people. So we can't give you a surefire way how to create something. You have to figure that out yourself, sadly. But if you do, it's not
sadly. It's an empowerment of you, right? Yeah. The thing that you need to understand is that you know your table best. You know what is the best item here. You just have to find it. For that, you need inspiration and ideas. And that is what we were able, I think, to maybe inspire today. For you to think about items in a different way. You don't necessarily have to think about mechanics. You can think about stories, about history, about characters, and then create items with that in mind instead of just, okay, I want a sword that hits big. You don't have to do that way. You can go that way, but at the end of the day, there's a 1,000 perfect ways and no perfect way at all. And that's why you can just go wild, especially also when it comes to balancing, right? You don't necessarily have to balance your item if you don't want to. Your item can be a little bit overpowered. It can be a little bit underpowered. You can always change it later, first of all. And second of all, let's be real, we're playing for fun, not for a mathematical formula or for a test where we have to get 100%. We're playing for fun. And fun comes from moments where something is overpowered or where something is undervalued and underpowered. That's also points where fun can come from. And at the end of the day, you're the best judge of your table. Please Don't think that anyone else, us or anyone else, can actually tell you what is better than what you can.
Yeah, perfect. And I think with that, we are done here. And thank you all for listening. Hear you on the next one. And bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of DoubleDM. It appears you liked this one. What we had to say and our advice helped you. Why not show us how we helped you in a rating? Or even write a review detailing us how we helped. You can do this on the platform that you are listening on right now. It's just a few clicks, doesn't take long, and helps us out. It gets us out there and our advice into more ears of more people. Thanks again for listening and joining us on this amazing journey. Have a great day and hear you on the next one. Bye bye.